Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we dive into heartfelt tales of resilience, love, and redemption that remind us of the power of human connection. Today, we share the incredible journey of Emily, a woman whose life is marked by betrayal, loss, and the unexpected discovery of a family she never knew. Get ready for a story that will touch your heart and leave you inspired. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden glow over the fields that stretched endlessly around Emily's modest home. The rhythmic sound of her hands digging into the soil was comforting, almost meditative. She worked alongside other women in the estate's greenhouse, her shirt clinging to her back as the day's labor took its toll. Despite the exhaustion, Emily's thoughts weren't on the aching of her arms or the sweat dripping from her forehead. Her mind was elsewhere, caught in the intoxicating pull of a forbidden love. Emily had always been the kind of person others admired quietly. She was diligent, kind-hearted, and undeniably beautiful, with soft curls escaping from the scarf tied around her head. Yet, she carried an air of humility, as if she didn't quite realize the strength of her presence. Her coworkers often teased her, nudging her about the men who admired her from afar. Today, it was the older woman, Mrs. Daniels, who smiled knowingly as she spoke. "Emily, you'll make a fine wife someday. Have you noticed how David watches you?" Emily straightened up, brushing a stray curl away from her damp cheek. She laughed, though her cheeks flushed. "David? He's rude and always bragging. I have no time for him." Mrs. Daniels. Her voice softened, carrying a hint of mischief. "Besides, my heart is already taken. But that's a secret." It wasn't much of a secret. Anyone who paid attention in their small town knew that Emily had caught the eye of Ryan Prescott, the landowner's son. Ryan was everything she wasn't: privileged, confident, and utterly captivating. Their connection had started in the quiet moments when no one was watching. A fleeting glance here, a whispered compliment there. It wasn't long before they began meeting in secret, hiding from the disapproving eyes of Ryan's family and the inevitable gossip of the town. After finishing her work that day, Emily washed up, changed into a simple dress, and took her bike to her grandmother Martha's house. She loved the feeling of the wind on her face as she rode through the fields, her worries temporarily forgotten. Halfway through her ride, she spotted a familiar figure. Ryan's Jeep was parked near the edge of the field, and there he was, standing tall against the backdrop of the setting sun. Her heart skipped a beat. She stopped her bike, leaving it by the roadside, and walked toward him. His smile widened as she approached, and before she could say a word, he pulled her into his arms. "Emily," he murmured, his voice warm and full of longing. "You have no idea how much I've missed you." Her smile faltered as she pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. "Ryan, when will we stop hiding? If you love me, we should tell everyone." Ryan hesitated, his charming confidence slipping for a moment. "Emily, you know how my parents are, but I promise, things will change. Trust me." He kissed her, and for a brief moment, all her doubts melted away, leaving only the dream of a future they could share together. Emily rode back home with a bittersweet ache in her heart. Ryan's words lingered in her mind, soothing and yet unsettling. She loved him, of that she was sure. His touch, his smile, the way he looked at her as though she were the only person in the world. These were the things she clung to. But there was a shadow of uncertainty that followed her now, growing heavier with each secret meeting. Why hadn't Ryan introduced her to his family? Why did they always have to meet where no one could see them? Her grandmother Martha was waiting for her on the porch, rocking slowly in her chair, the older woman's face, lined with years of hard work and wisdom, lit up when she saw Emily, though it quickly turned stern. "You've been with him again, haven't you?" she said, nodding knowingly. Emily sighed, dismounting her bike. She leaned it against the fence and walked toward her grandmother. "Yes, Grandma, I was with Ryan. Don't start again, please." Martha shook her head, a mix of concern and frustration in her expression. "Emily, I've told you before, that boy may love you, but his family will never accept you. You're just a girl from the fields to them. They'll find someone else for him. someone they think is worthy. Emily bristled at her grandmother's words, though she knew they came from a place of love. You don't understand, Grandma. Ryan isn't like his parents. He's different. He loves me, and he'll prove it to you. Martha's gaze softened, and she reached out to pat Emily's hand. I hope you're right, child. But love isn't always enough when people let pride and power get in the way. The next few days passed in a blur of work and quiet anticipation. Emily poured herself into her tasks, her mind a swirl of emotions. When Ryan surprised her with a visit in the field one afternoon, she felt her spirits lift. He brought her a gift, a delicate lace blouse, and her heart soared at the gesture. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever owned. You'll look stunning in this, Ryan said, watching her hold the blouse against herself. Wear it to the party this weekend. Emily's smile dimmed slightly. But you're coming too, right? Ryan's expression faltered, and he rubbed the back of his neck. I can't, Emily. I have to attend a meeting with my father. But you should go and enjoy yourself. I'll be thinking about you the whole time. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but Emily nodded, unwilling to argue. She didn't want to push Ryan away, not when she had so much faith in their love. Still, as she watched him leave, a familiar doubt crept in. How long would she have to wait for their love to be real, out in the open for everyone to see? Later that evening, Martha's voice echoed in Emily's mind as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Love isn't always enough. Emily closed her eyes, holding on to the belief that Ryan's love was. It had to be. The day of the party arrived, but Emily decided not to go. Instead, she spent the evening helping her grandmother water the garden. The blouse Ryan had given her carefully folded and stored in a drawer. She tried to shake the feeling that she was living a dream too fragile to survive in the harsh light of reality. Her grandmother's warnings weighed on her, but she clung to Ryan's promise. Love, she told herself, would conquer all. The following week, Emily's world changed forever. One morning, while working in the greenhouse, a wave of dizziness washed over her. She stepped outside for air, clutching her stomach. It wasn't long before the realization hit her. She was pregnant. Fear and joy collided within her as she sat on the bench, staring at the horizon. The thought of carrying Ryan's child filled her with a profound sense of purpose. But the uncertainty of what lay ahead loomed like a storm cloud. She couldn't hide this from Ryan. That evening, they met in their usual spot near the field. When she told him, his face paled, but he quickly recovered, pulling her into his arms. Emily, don't worry, he said, his voice steady. I won't leave you. We'll get through this together. Tomorrow, we'll apply for a marriage license. I'll tell my parents, and we'll make it work. Trust me. Emily cried tears of relief. For a moment, it seemed like all her fears had been unfounded. Ryan loved her. He was willing to stand by her. The next morning, they filled out the paperwork and made their plans. But by the evening, the cracks began to show. Ryan's parents were furious when they found out. His mother's voice rang through the estate, her anger echoing in every corner. You've ruined everything, she shouted. She's nothing. Ryan, a poor girl with no family, no future. How do you know the child is even yours? You're throwing away your life for her. Ryan tried to defend Emily, but his father's icy resolve silenced him. If you marry her, you'll be on your own, Mr. Prescott said, his tone cold and final. No support, no inheritance. Is that the life you want? When Ryan came to see Emily the next day, his face was heavy with guilt. She could sense the shift before he even spoke. Emily, I don't know how to say this, he began, avoiding her eyes. My father, he won't let us. I tried, but I can't fight him. Emily's heart broke. She grabbed his hand, desperate. You promised. Ryan, you said we'd face this together. How can you turn your back on me now? I'm sorry, he whispered, stepping away. Maybe it's for the best. As Ryan walked away, Emily felt the weight of betrayal crush her. Tears blurred her vision as she realized that the man she had trusted with her heart, and now her future, had chosen his family's approval over her. She was alone, carrying the child of a man who had abandoned her. Emily packed her belongings with trembling hands. her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. She had only told Ryan about the pregnancy, sparing her grandmother the truth for fear of breaking her fragile heart. But now, as she prepared to leave the small town she had always known, the weight of her decision bore down on her. Her grandmother Martha watched her quietly from the doorway. "Emily, why are you leaving so suddenly?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "Did something happen with Ryan?" Emily hesitated, forcing a weak smile. "We had a fight, Grandma. It's over between us, and I can't stay here anymore. I need a fresh start." Martha's eyes softened with sadness, but she didn't press further. She embraced Emily tightly, whispering, "You've always been strong. My girl, wherever you go, remember you're loved." The train ride to Atlanta was long and lonely. Emily stared out the window, tears streaming down her face as the fields and hills of her hometown faded into the distance. She clutched her stomach, whispering promises to her unborn child. "I'll make this work," she said softly. "I don't know how yet, but I will." In the city, Emily quickly realized how overwhelming and unforgiving it could be. Every knock on a door, every job application was met with rejection. Employers weren't eager to hire a pregnant woman, especially one with no connections or experience beyond farm work. Days turned into weeks, and the little money she had dwindled rapidly. One evening, while sitting on a bench outside a busy market, Emily was approached by a warm and cheerful woman named Linda. She had been watching Emily for some time and noticed her struggling. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Linda asked, sitting beside her. Emily hesitated before opening up. Something about Linda's kind eyes made her feel safe. She explained her situation, her voice trembling with vulnerability. Linda listened intently, then smiled. "I might be able to help. I work for a family, the Carters. They're good people, and I think they're looking for someone to help around the house. It's not much, but it's steady work. Why don't I introduce you?" The next morning, Emily followed Linda to a beautiful two-story home surrounded by lush gardens. She marveled at the elegance of the Carter residence, feeling a pang of nervousness as they approached the door. Linda knocked, and a tall, well-dressed man opened it. "This is James Carter," Linda said, introducing him with a smile. "James, this is Emily. She's hardworking, trustworthy, and in need of an opportunity." James studied Emily for a moment, his eyes kind but cautious. "Come inside," he said finally. "Let's talk." Emily explained her situation, speaking with honesty and dignity despite her fears. "I know being pregnant might make me seem unreliable, but I promise I'll work harder than anyone. All I need is a chance." After a long pause, James nodded. "You'll have a trial period of 1 month. If it works out, you can stay." Relief washed over Emily. It wasn't just a job, it was hope. For the first time since Ryan's betrayal, she felt like she had a foothold to rebuild her life. Emily settled into her new role with quiet determination, pouring her energy into every task at the Carter household. The work was challenging, but she welcomed the distraction. Cleaning, organizing, and maintaining the gardens gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in weeks. Each evening, she returned to the guest house provided by the Carters, where Linda would join her for tea. Their conversations became a source of comfort, a reminder that she wasn't entirely alone. James Carter, the head of the household, was a fair and polite man who treated Emily with respect. However, his wife, Amanda, was the opposite, demanding, cold, and often critical. Amanda's sharp remarks and perfectionist standards made Emily nervous, but she endured them in silence, fearing she might lose the job she so desperately needed. Amanda's disdain seemed only to grow when Emily's pregnancy became more visible. "You'll need to be quicker with your tasks," Amanda said one afternoon, her eyes narrowing as she noticed Emily pausing to rub her aching back. Pregnancy is no excuse for laziness. Emily bit her tongue, swallowing the retort that threatened to escape. She couldn't afford to argue, not when this job was her lifeline. Linda had warned her about Amanda's temper, advising Emily to remain agreeable no matter what. It wasn't easy, but Emily reminded herself that her child's future depended on her resilience. One evening, as Emily finished mopping the kitchen floor, she noticed a young woman entering the house. She was strikingly beautiful, with flowing blonde hair and a confident stride. Linda introduced her as Claire, the surrogate mother hired by the Carters to carry their long-awaited children. Claire's arrival brought a new dynamic to the household. She was treated more like a vessel than a person, monitored closely by Amanda, who demanded that she adhere to strict diets and routines. Despite the luxurious setting, Claire seemed deeply uncomfortable, and Emily couldn't help but feel sympathy for her. The two women began exchanging quiet smiles and brief conversations when no one else was around. One day, Emily found Claire in the kitchen, her eyes red from crying. "I can't take it anymore," Claire admitted, her voice trembling. "They act like I'm not even human, just an incubator." Emily nodded, understanding Claire's pain. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "I know it's hard, but try to focus on the babies. They need you." As weeks passed, Emily and Claire grew closer, bonded by their shared struggles. Emily even snuck Claire a jar of pickles from her grandmother's pantry after hearing her craving something salty, an act of kindness that Claire never forgot. Despite their budding friendship, Emily noticed Claire growing more distant. One morning, the house was in chaos. Claire had fled in the middle of the night, leaving only a brief note behind. Amanda was furious, but James's reaction was one of quiet despair. "The babies," he murmured, staring out the window. "What's going to happen to them?" Emily felt a pang of guilt and sadness for the man who had shown her kindness. She didn't know it yet, but this unexpected turn of events would bring her closer to the family, and to a purpose she never could have imagined. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Emily's story reminds us that even in the face of heartbreak, hope and love can prevail. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who need a little inspiration today. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss our next compelling tale. Together, let's continue exploring the beautiful complexities of life here on Empathy Stories. See you next time.